Hello, Leo. Today's reading already feels very warm, very emotional, and honestly, a little impossible to ignore. As I sit with your energy, I keep feeling like someone has been carrying feelings for you much longer than they've admitted. It's almost as if the more they tried to push those feelings away, the stronger they became. Okay, this person may not have said much, but their heart has been doing a lot of talking behind the scenes. And here's the question. What happens when someone can no longer pretend they don't care? What happens when they finally realize that losing you would hurt far more than facing their feelings? Honestly, Leo, this feels like someone who has reached a turning point. Someone who is beginning to understand just how much you truly mean to them. So trust your intuition, because the energy surrounding this connection feels stronger than ever. There may be healing, honesty, and a conversation that has been waiting far too long to happen. And let's get into your reading. Okay, Leo. The very first thing I'm noticing is that someone keeps trying to convince themselves that they've moved on. Yet every time they think they've finally gained some distance, something pulls them right back to you. It feels almost automatic. They see something that reminds them of you. They hear a song. They pass a familiar place. They remember a conversation. And suddenly you're on their mind again. I'm seeing the Sun card right away. And honestly, this energy is hard to miss. It's almost like your presence left a mark on this person's life. Not because you were trying to, not because you demanded attention, but because there was something about the way you carried yourself that stood out from everyone else around you. You may not even realize how much they admired you. For some of you, they admired your confidence. For others, it was your kindness, your resilience, or simply the way you stayed true to yourself, even when life became difficult. The energy is showing me someone who keeps comparing other people to you, and nobody quite measures up. That's what makes this so frustrating for them. They thought time would make these feelings disappear. They thought distance would help them move on. Instead, the opposite seems to be happening. And now I'm seeing the Ace of Cups appearing in the spread. The moment this card shows itself, I feel this rush of emotion that they've been trying very hard to keep under control. This person may appear calm on the outside. They may act logical. They may even tell themselves that they're being unrealistic. Yet underneath all of that, there is a heart that keeps returning to the same place. It keeps returning to you. For some of you, this person never expected to feel this deeply. That's what keeps coming through. They thought this would be temporary. They thought you were just another chapter. But somewhere along the way, their feelings became much bigger than they planned for. And now they're trying to make sense of emotions that no longer fit inside the neat little box they created. I'm also noticing the Star card here, and the energy feels almost dreamlike. It's like this person sees something in you that they haven't found anywhere else. They may not always have the words to explain it. Honestly, they may not even understand it themselves. But whenever they think about the future, whenever they imagine what happiness could look like, your energy somehow appears in the picture. There is something very unique about you in their eyes. It feels like you challenged their assumptions. You showed them a different perspective. You reminded them that real connections don't happen every day. And because of that, forgetting you has become much harder than they ever expected. Yeah, and as I'm sitting with this energy a little longer, the Six of Cups starts coming forward. The memories feel incredibly strong here. This is somebody who replays moments in their mind more often than you realize. Little conversations, little details, things you may have completely forgotten. They hold on to those moments because those memories still make them feel close to you. What surprises me is that the feelings don't seem to be fading. If anything, they appear to be growing. The longer they stay silent, the more they find themselves wondering what could have happened if things had gone differently. And Leo, the energy is showing me that this person may be approaching a point where simply thinking about you is no longer enough. Because something is beginning to shift beneath the surface, and I'm starting to see signs that those hidden feelings may not stay hidden forever. It's interesting because the energy starts to feel quieter here. Not weaker, just quieter. Like somebody who has spent a long time sitting alone with their own thoughts. I keep feeling this moment where they stopped focusing on what they wanted and started looking at what they lost. The first card catching my attention is Judgment. And honestly, Leo, It feels like this person has been going through a wake-up call that they weren't expecting. I don't think this happened all at once. It feels gradual, like little realizations showing up day after day until they could no longer ignore what was right in front of them. For some of you, this is somebody who spent a lot of time convincing themselves that they were fine, that they didn't need this connection, that life would simply move forward and everything would eventually settle down. Yet the energy is showing me that something kept pulling them back into reflection. Every road they took somehow led them back to the same question. What if they were wrong? What if they walked away from something that genuinely mattered? What if they allowed fear to make a decision that their heart never wanted? I'm seeing the Hermit here, and wow, this feels deeply personal. This isn't somebody who has been sharing their emotions with everyone around them. If anything, they've been keeping most of this to themselves. They may appear normal on the outside. They may go to work, spend time with friends, handle responsibilities, and keep life moving. Yet beneath all of that, there's been a very private journey taking place. I feel like they've been replaying choices, replaying conversations, replaying moments where they could have said something different, done something different, chosen differently. And the more they look back, the harder it becomes to ignore the value of what they had with you. Okay, and this is where the energy becomes emotional, because I'm seeing strength coming through. What surprises me is that this card doesn't feel connected to pride. It feels connected to vulnerability, almost like this person has spent so much time trying to appear strong that they forgot how to be honest about what they were feeling. You know, sometimes people believe being strong means hiding emotions, pretending nothing affects them, pretending they don't care, pretending they can walk away without looking back. Honestly, Leo, I feel like this person tried that, and it didn't work. The energy is showing me somebody who eventually became exhausted from carrying emotions they refused to acknowledge. There may have been old wounds involved here. Fear of rejection, fear of commitment, fear of repeating past mistakes. For some of you, this person may have experienced disappointments long before you ever entered their life. Those wounds didn't disappear when they met you. They simply became harder to hide. And what I'm noticing now is that they are beginning to understand that the problem was never this connection. The problem was everything they were carrying into it. Yeah, that's what this feels like. A realization. A difficult one, but an important one. Because once they stopped blaming circumstances, once they stopped blaming timing, once they stopped blaming everything outside of themselves, they were finally left facing their own reflection. And that's where I'm seeing the Death card. Honestly, this doesn't feel dramatic at all. It feels necessary. It feels like somebody slowly shedding an old version of themselves. The version that ran from difficult emotions. The version that hesitated. The version that believed keeping their distance would somehow protect them. I feel like they're starting to understand that distance didn't protect them. It only gave them more time to miss what was gone. For some of you, there were habits, beliefs, or fears that needed to be released before this person could even understand the significance of this connection. And while that process hasn't been easy, it feels like they're no longer standing in the same place emotionally. The person who looks back at this situation today is not the same person who walked away from it. That's the feeling I'm getting. And the more they change, the more clearly they begin to see your value. Not because someone told them, not because they suddenly became lonely, but because they finally understand what your presence brought into their life. Something genuine, something comforting, something real. What I'm seeing next is interesting because the energy begins shifting away from self-reflection and toward outside influences. It's almost as if this person is beginning to question certain voices, certain opinions, and certain narratives that may have affected the way they saw this connection in the first place. And Leo, that appears to be where this story starts taking an unexpected turn. It's almost like a veil is being lifted here. The energy feels different, less confused, less uncertain, more honest. As I sit with this part of the reading, I keep feeling like this person has been forced to question things they once accepted as truth. The first card drawing my attention is the Page of Swords. And honestly, Leo, this feels like someone who has spent a lot of time observing, watching, listening, trying to gather information before making a decision. The strange thing is that some of the information they were holding on to may not have been completely accurate. I feel like there were outside voices around this situation, outside opinions, outside judgments, people who thought they understood you, people who believed they knew your intentions. For some of you, this may have been friends, family members, co-workers, or simply people who liked having something to say. And what I'm noticing is that this person listened, not because they wanted to hurt you, not because they were trying to create distance. It feels more like they were uncertain themselves. When somebody doesn't fully understand their own feelings, they're often more vulnerable to what other people think. And that's exactly what I'm seeing here. The energy is showing me moments where they questioned you, moments where they doubted your intentions, moments where they wondered if maybe what they were hearing was true. Yet every time they looked at the actual connection, every time they looked at the way they felt when they were around you, something wasn't adding up. Yeah, that's the strange part. Their experience of you never seemed to match the stories they were hearing. I'm seeing the Seven of Swords coming through now, and honestly, this feels connected to confusion more than anything else. There may have been hidden agendas around them, people projecting their own fears, people assuming things without really knowing the full story. For some of you, somebody may have been trying to influence their perception of you because they simply didn't understand the connection themselves. The more I sit with this energy, the more it feels like this person started realizing that they had been looking at you through somebody else's lens. And once they became aware of that, everything started changing. Because here's the thing, Leo. When somebody genuinely pays attention to you, when they stop listening to the noise and start paying attention to their own experience, they begin noticing details they missed before. They begin noticing consistency, integrity, kindness, authenticity, whatever applies to your situation. I feel like this person started recognizing that the version of you they were told about wasn't the version of you they actually knew. And that's where justice appears. Wow, the energy feels very clear here. Not dramatic, not emotional, just clear. Like somebody finally deciding to be honest with themselves. It feels like they're reaching a place where they can no longer blame circumstances, other people, or outside influences for the choices they've made. There's accountability here. There's awareness here. And honestly, I respect that energy because it feels genuine. For some of you, this person may even feel guilty, not because they intentionally wronged you, but because they now realize they allowed doubt to shape their actions. They may be looking back at certain moments and wondering why they didn't trust their own instincts, why they ignored what their heart was trying to tell them, why they allowed fear and uncertainty to become louder than the connection itself. The Devil card is coming forward now, and this is interesting because it feels connected to unhealthy influences and old patterns that this person is finally beginning to recognize. I don't feel like they're pointing fingers anymore. I feel like they're looking at themselves. They're looking at the habits that kept them stuck, the fears that kept them silent, the assumptions that kept them distant. For some of you, they may even be realizing that certain people around them were encouraging those fears instead of helping them move beyond them. And the more this awareness grows, the harder it becomes for them to continue pretending that none of this matters. You know what keeps standing out to me? They're beginning to trust their own voice again. Not the voice of friends, not the voice of family, not the voice of people who think they know what's best. Their own voice, their own heart, their own experience. And I feel like that's creating a powerful shift inside them. Because once somebody stops viewing you through other people's opinions, they're finally left with one undeniable truth: how they actually feel. The energy is showing me that they're no longer questioning whether this connection affected them. They already know it did. What they're questioning now is what they should do about it. And Leo, that's where the energy starts moving towards something much more personal. Because I'm beginning to see signs that they've been carrying words inside their heart that they were never brave enough to say out loud. There's a tenderness entering the reading that wasn't here before. The energy feels less guarded, less defensive, almost like somebody has finally become tired of carrying words they never allowed themselves to say. As I sit with this, I keep feeling a pressure building inside this person. Not in a negative way, more like the feeling you get when you've held something in for so long that silence starts becoming heavier than honesty. The first card I'm seeing is the Page of Cups, and immediately I feel this nervous energy. You know when somebody keeps rehearsing conversations in their head? They think about what they want to say, then they change it, then they rethink it again. That's exactly what this feels like. For some of you, this person has imagined reaching out more times than you realize. They've imagined the message. They've imagined the phone call. They've imagined seeing you face to face. And every version of that moment seems to begin with the same thing: an acknowledgement, an admission, something they should have said a long time ago. The energy is showing me somebody who wants to explain themselves, not because they're looking for excuses, but because they genuinely hope you'll understand what was happening inside them during all of that confusion. Honestly, Leo, I don't feel like this person is proud of the way things unfolded. There are moments they wish they could revisit, moments they wish they could handle differently, moments where fear spoke louder than their heart. And that's where I feel this apology sitting. Not necessarily a dramatic apology, not necessarily some grand performance, just honesty. Simple honesty. The kind that says, I know I hurt you. The kind that says, I know I wasn't ready. The kind that says, I understand why things became difficult. Yeah, that's the feeling. And as I'm looking deeper into the spread, the Knight of Cups comes forward. Wow. The energy changes immediately. Because this card doesn't feel like somebody hiding anymore. It feels like somebody moving, somebody preparing themselves emotionally, somebody deciding that their feelings deserve to be spoken rather than buried. I feel like they've reached a point where keeping everything inside no longer feels sustainable. The energy is showing me somebody who has spent so much time thinking about possibilities that they're beginning to realize action is the only thing left. For some of you, they may still feel nervous, very nervous. They may wonder how you'll respond. They may wonder if too much time has passed. They may wonder whether you've already moved forward with your life. Yet despite those fears, I keep feeling this determination growing. Like they're slowly convincing themselves that saying something is better than living with regret. Okay, and this is interesting because the Two of Wands is appearing right beside it. This feels like planning, careful planning. I don't think this person wants to rush into your space carelessly. I feel like they're thinking about timing, thinking about approach, thinking about the best way to reconnect. For some of you, this may be somebody who wants to make sure they come toward you differently than before. More mature, more honest, more intentional. Because they know the version of themselves that existed in the past isn't the version they want you to see anymore. The energy feels very thoughtful here, very deliberate, almost like they're standing at the edge of a new chapter trying to gather the courage to take the first step. And honestly, Leo, I think what's motivating them isn't just love. It's realization. The realization that meaningful connections don't wait forever. The realization that opportunities can disappear. The realization that people eventually stop waiting. I'm seeing moments where they picture you moving on, building a life, meeting somebody else, finding happiness elsewhere. And every time that possibility crosses their mind, it seems to push them closer toward action. Then Eight of Wands suddenly enters the reading. And wow, the energy starts accelerating. Everything that felt slow begins moving faster. Everything that felt stuck begins loosening. I feel communication around this card, movement around this card, momentum around this card. It's almost like all the internal preparation we've been seeing is beginning to create external movement. For some of you, this could start with something small, a message, a conversation, a simple attempt to reconnect. For others, it may be much bigger than that. What matters is that the energy no longer feels frozen. It feels active. Like somebody who has spent a long time standing still is finally preparing to move. And the more I sit with this energy, the more I feel there is something they haven't revealed yet. Because underneath the apology, underneath the confession, underneath the desire to reconnect, there appears to be an even deeper reason they're coming forward. Something connected to healing, commitment, and the future they've quietly imagined for much longer than they've ever admitted. There's a sense of sincerity coming through this part of the reading that feels very different from everything we've looked at so far. The energy isn't focused on what went wrong anymore. It isn't focused on fear, confusion, or hesitation. What I'm feeling now is somebody asking themselves a very simple question. What would happen if I actually tried? Not imagined it, not dreamed about it, not thought about it from a distance. Actually tried. And honestly, Leo, that shift changes everything. The first card catching my attention is the Hierophant. The moment it appears, I feel this person's energy becoming much more serious. What stands out to me is that they're no longer looking at this connection as something temporary. They're no longer viewing it as something they can put aside and revisit later. It feels like they've reached a point where they're beginning to understand the long-term value of what exists between the two of you. For some of you, this person may have spent a very long time avoiding commitment in general. Not necessarily because they didn't care, but because commitment requires vulnerability. It requires trust. It requires consistency. And consistency is difficult when somebody is still fighting themselves. Yet the energy is showing me somebody who is tired of fighting, tired of running, tired of pretending they don't know what their heart wants. I keep hearing the words, I want to do this right. Not perfectly, not flawlessly, just honestly. And that's a very different energy than what we've been seeing. Okay, and as I sit with that feeling, the Ten of Pentacles comes forward, and wow, this feels bigger than attraction, bigger than chemistry, bigger than temporary emotions. I'm seeing somebody imagining a future, not in a fantasy way, in a real way, the kind of future that includes stability, trust, partnership, building something together. For some of you, this person has spent so much time observing your life, your values, your character, that they've started realizing how rare it is to find somebody they genuinely respect. And respect feels important here, very important, because this isn't just about missing you. It's about recognizing what you bring into a relationship. The comfort, the warmth, the loyalty, the light. Honestly, Leo, I feel like this person sees qualities in you that become more valuable with time, not less. The energy is showing me somebody who no longer wants quick solutions or temporary fixes. They want something that lasts, something meaningful, something they can actually build upon. And then the Ace of Cups appears again. It's beautiful because this card feels different than it did before. Earlier, it felt like hidden emotions, unspoken feelings, love quietly growing beneath the surface. Now it feels like an offering, an open heart, a willingness to show up emotionally. For some of you, this person may not have all the answers yet. They may not know exactly how every conversation will unfold. They may not know what your response will be. Yet I feel them reaching a place where authenticity matters more than certainty. They're beginning to understand that healing doesn't happen through silence. Healing happens through honesty, through effort, through showing up. And that's why I keep feeling this desire to prove themselves rather than simply talk about their intentions. Because words matter. Of course they do. But the energy is showing me somebody who wants their actions to speak just as loudly. Somebody who wants you to see the difference, rather than simply hear promises about it. Yeah, that's what keeps coming through. Growth, maturity, accountability, a genuine desire to do better. And as I look at the final card, the sun begins shining through the reading once again. Honestly, this feels like the perfect energy to close this chapter with. Not because everything has already been resolved, not because every question has been answered, but because clarity has finally entered a situation that once felt uncertain. I feel like this person sees you differently now. Or maybe the truth is they always saw you this way, but they're finally allowing themselves to admit it. The warmth, the confidence, the joy, the sense of life that seems to follow you wherever you go. It feels like they understand something now that they couldn't fully understand before. Your presence wasn't something they were supposed to take for granted. And the energy is showing me that their greatest hope may not simply be reconnecting. It may be creating something healthier, stronger, and more genuine than what existed before. Because deep in their heart, Leo, it feels like they're no longer asking whether this connection matters. They're asking whether they'll be given the chance to show you just how much it does. That's all I've got for you for this reading, Leo. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I truly appreciate every single one of you. And honestly, if there's one thing this reading keeps showing me, it's that some connections leave a much deeper mark on our hearts than we realize. Sometimes people need distance to understand what they had. Sometimes they need time to see what was standing right in front of them all along. Whether this message resonates with your situation or not, I hope it reminds you of something important. Your value has never depended on whether someone chooses to see it immediately. The right people eventually recognize the light you've been carrying all along. So keep moving forward. Keep choosing yourself. Keep trusting your journey. And if someone is finding the courage to heal, to be honest, and to come toward you with a more open heart, I hope they arrive with the sincerity and maturity this connection deserves. You all mean a lot to me, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care of yourselves. Okay, bye-bye.